Hello again. In the description to this video I'll give a link to an entry from Google's blog on Thursday in which it is announced that they are to begin taking steps against those who challenge or deny the existence of man-made climate change. This is only the opening shot. It will develop into discouraging climate change skeptics in the same way that anti-vaxxers have been discouraged. That is to say, with banning or suspending the YouTube accounts of those who express views which are not in accordance with the current scientific consensus, as Google put it. And right there is the nature of the problem, in that we may only talk of the current scientific consensus, because beliefs in science are not fixed and immutable, but change over the years. What Google actually hoped to do is to halt history itself and freeze it at one particular point in time. And if ever there were a fool's errand doomed to failure, this is surely it. Let me explain. I'm sure that most viewers know about continental drift, or at least they've heard of continental drift and plate tectonics. Which is to say, the idea is that the Earth's continents float on a sea of molten rock and move about on it very, very slowly, like icebergs. So it is that India was once a very large island which drifted into Asia, crashed into it slowly, and when it collided with that continent, the rocks buckled and arose, forming the Himalaya mountains and the Tibetan plateau. Similarly, America is moving away from Africa at about the same speed that our fingernails grow. The Atlantic Ocean is getting 1.5 inches wider each year. This is so commonly known that it's hard to believe that such an idea was once regarded as being as mad as denying climate change. I mean by this that plate tectonics ran counter to the scientific consensus. Here is an encyclopedia. Look at this, the Illustrated Encyclopedia of General Knowledge, and it was published in 1957. It's good, isn't it? Right, let me find a little bit here which will tell us about the scientific consensus. Let's see what it says about forming the continents. The Earth was at first a whirling ball of molten matter, gradually cooling over millions of years until a scum of hardened lava formed a skin on the surface. The continents and seas changed shapes many times, for the Earth's crust buckled and cracked as it cooled, making new hollows for the sea to drain into and forcing up new ranges of mountains. Okay, and here on the next page you can see the continents form. It says mountain ranges were thrust up, the Himalayas, the Alps and the Andes, and the great depths of the Pacific Ocean were made by the crinkling of the Earth's crust. In other words, there's nothing about continental drift there, you'll notice. And that's because 60 years ago, continental drift and plate tectonics was seen by orthodox science as crackpot ideas. The scientific consensus was the one which I just read out, idiotic and untrue though it was. I suppose if Google had been around in 1957, they would have wanted to discourage people from discussing continental drift because it went against the scientific consensus. Here's another example. When I was a child, the scientific consensus was that the universe was eternal and unchanging. It had always been in existence. Most cosmologists thought then that the idea of the universe coming into existence at a particular time was absolutely mad. There was no evidence for such a notion. That was the scientific consensus, that the universe had always been in existence. Now things have changed, and the scientific consensus is that the universe did indeed come into existence at a particular time. thousands of millions of years ago. This is how science works. What Google refers to in its blog as the scientific consensus is not a fixed state of affairs, but a collection of tentative hypotheses. This is what I mean when I say that Google is trying to call a halt to history and is challenging the scientific method itself. Many of the things which scientists believe today are going to be proved wrong in the future as new evidence emerges. That means there'll be a new scientific consensus which is different from the one which Google is so enthusiastic about today. This is as true of meteorology as it is of particle physics. It applies to cosmology as it does to genetics. It would be quite mad to seize on any point in history, whether it is present day in October 2021 or 1957 when this encyclopedia was published, and to say this is it. This is the eternal truth about science which will endure through the ages. I cannot for the life of me imagine what Google are up to, trying to challenge science in this way and halt it in its tracks. One thing I can say with absolute and perfect confidence is that such an attempt must fail. I seem to recollect that the Catholic Church tried a similar trick in the 17th century with Galileo. For the Church, scientific consensus had been established with the work of Ptolemy 1500 years earlier. They were no more successful in their attempt to freeze science and stop it regressing than Google are likely to be today. You have to admire Google for trying, though. I mean, it's an enormously ambitious idea, but I'm afraid that the Catholic Church was unable to halt scientific inquiry at the height of its power, and I'm very much of the opinion that Google will not be able to do so either.